ChatGPT Plus is free for college students through May. Here's the thing. You've got a lot to do between now and then. Studying for finals, writing papers, trying to keep your life on track. And ChatGPT can help with all of it. It can quiz you for your econ exam, make a study guide from your French notes, plan out your meals and study breaks. It can get really specific on how you like to learn. It can even help you come up with ways to stop procrastinating. So from now until summer break, take advantage of all the ways ChatGPT can make your life easier. Restrictions apply.
Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a entrepreneur for us on the show today, Andy Reinhold. He's the founder of Studio Spark, and he's going to talk to us all about how solopreneurs, entrepreneurs can use AI as automation. He's an expert in AI and automation. He's got a really interesting story. He's worked for Deloitte and he's started ventures. He's going to talk to us all about his skill in this area, as well as words of inspiration for those that are chasing their dreams, but just getting stuck in the rat race. Andy, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me, Chris. Yeah, and thanks for that intro. It's been a warm welcome here for sure. Yeah, like Chris said, I'm Andy. I'm founder of Studio Spark. I was a former Deloitte consulting manager, and my story is I burnt out really hard. I failed to launch my first business. It didn't go well at all. I was doing it while I was trying to raise 2 kids. And then at the same time, I got cancer. My dad got really sick too. I actually lost my family dog as well.
Wow.
So a lot of stuff just happened all at once. And then at that point, I was like, hey, I went radical there. And I was like, hey, let's chase a dream job in the video game industry. And I did get the video game industry job, only to find out it wasn't really the dream that I was hoping for. So once I recovered from cancer, I promised myself that I never wanted to ever waste my time ever again on things I didn't love doing. And that's when I found AI and automation and how much it really can save us so much time and allow us to do more and really do more of the things that we enjoy. So that's what I really focus my time and attention on.
Yeah. And I love this. Never waste your time on things you don't love. That's really powerful.
I don't hear you.
Yeah. And I love that statement. It's very powerful. Never waste time on things you don't love. And what's really interesting is no city, job, relationship, or anything is worth it if you have to abandon who you are.
Absolutely.
So talk about, you have this no hustle blueprint to scale like a Fortune 500 without big teams.
Yeah. So basically, one of the biggest things about AI and automation is that a lot of these tools really can enable you to do more for much less now. And that's really where you get a lot of power. And it's actually more potent for smaller businesses and solopreneurs because you can be more agile, right? Mm-hmm. So the areas that you can apply these frameworks where you're using AI and automation, you can do it in your marketing workflows. You can do it in your sales workflows, in your operations workflows, finance as well, right? There's a lot of disruption in the finance industry with AI and automation. And the nice thing is that if you have something that's repeatable and you have a workflow or some sort of pipeline that's working for you right now, you can automate that thing. And when you automate it, you can either use it to find ways to save you more time so you can go do more revenue generating activities, or you can use it to supercharge your actual revenue generating activities, right? So a lot of my clients, they approach me, they're looking for lead generation systems like cold email systems or even content generation systems for warmer inbound leads. And on the operation side, it's, hey, how can I reduce some of these meetings? How can I take this documentation and make SOPs out of them? So these are things that really can supercharge what we can do and really scale like big companies can when they usually just throw people and people power at those problems.
Yeah. Fascinating. And what are some tools that I know obviously people come to you, but what are some like basic tools that people should be paying attention to?
Yeah. So I always take the approach that the tool needs to fit the actual problem you're trying to solve. So my tool stack is actually much more simpler than what other people in the field are using and other peers. So in fact, I actually don't chase the latest and greatest tools and news. I actually really focus on what works and what's solving people's problems. So for me, and this is going to sound as elementary as it goes in terms of this industry, but ChatGPT to help with brainstorming. I use make.com, and it's a Zapier competitor, if you're familiar with that. Basically, I consider it as the glue of the internet. It connects different tool sets of the internet together. Airtable, which is basically a spreadsheet on steroids. And then when I automate things, I use maybe the more complicated thing I use is just the OpenAI API and ChatGPT backend. So ChatGPT, you can type and talk with it. You can actually do that through a quote unquote backdoor method. And this is how I automate ChatGPT instead of just talking to it.
Oh,
and so that's generally my tech stack. And I usually don't go any more complicated than that unless I'm trying to gather data. And that's where I use packaged, polished storefront stuff from Appify to help me collect data. And that's as far as I go from a technical standpoint.
Interesting.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Yeah, so then the next question I have for you is, I love this idea. The other question is, you talk about how can people learn about AI and automation if they're not technical or they don't have the time?
Yeah, absolutely. So what's nice about AI tools, as I mentioned, is that they help you save time, right? So the easiest way to get into using these AI automation tools is literally just using them, right? Understanding what works, what doesn't. So my recommendation is always start with Claude or ChatGPT. And just start asking it questions on how to make your life a little bit easier, whether it's your actual work life or your personal life. And as it spits back answers to you, you're going to find out what works and what doesn't work. And that's how I learned, actually. So when I first started using ChatGPT, it was very elementary. I was literally talking to it like it was like a personal assistant. And it was giving back answers that I didn't want, or it was giving me things I didn't need. And a lot of times back then, it was hallucinating too. This was a few years ago. But as I kept using it, I learned I have to structure and tailor my prompts to ChatGPT to get the outputs I need. If you're just getting started out with ChatGPT, there's a framework that is like ChatGPT 101 that many people learn, which is you define a role, you define the task, and you define some additional specifications. And if you start with that, you start understanding how ChatGPT works, what to ask it, and what to expect from it back. Now, when you start learning all those tools, and then when you start learning how to automate these things, then you can understand, okay, how do I make sure it brings back predictable results every single time for my business? And that's why I focus on tools like Make and ChatGPT together, because after learning these skill sets, I'm able to make sure that ChatGPT gives me the answer I expect every single time. And that's how I can automate it. So it's repeatable for my actual business.
And you have a way to automate 90% of your busy work and stay human in the process.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best example of this is I used to run a lot of stand-up. So I'm actually a project manager professional, certified PMP. And lately, a lot, I guess before I started my own business here, a lot of the stuff I was in charge of was running stand-ups, daily stand-ups and status meetings. And there are a lot of times, especially with highly technical development teams, where the stand-up does usually get a little bit exhausting and tiring, especially with larger companies where we're already providing a lot of documentation asynchronously, a lot of updates asynchronously. So my favorite thing to do up front with my clients, and I actually have a YouTube video on how to do this step-by-step, is for teams that don't think a daily stand-up is necessary, maybe a weekly will be good. but you still need a daily update, right? Especially me as a project manager, I need to be on top of the information flow. So my favorite thing to do is actually just have a form that everyone fills out and then send that form automatically to LLM like ChatGPT and say, hey, what are the key takeaways from everyone's updates? It processes it. And then I inject my human thoughts into it where it's, okay, please keep things forward thinking, right? Please keep things actionable. Please keep in mind of people's difficulties and what they're having trouble with, right? What is the subtext of what they're saying, right? And it picks up these things, and because of how these LLMs work. And then I actually have a report of who are the people I should spend my most time with today. And what are the tasks that are going to be fine? Who are the people that I need to spend time with? And so that's how I humanize these things. And that's what makes me a little bit more of an effective project manager in those situations. So that's my favorite example of how we can add this human element to our daily mundane tasks.
Interesting. And you also have how to create 100 pieces of content in a day that actually converts.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So this is one of my other favorite parts too. So there are a lot of amazing tools out there, and I still use a lot too. They help you generate content, social media content really quickly, and it makes really good stuff. I've tried many different tools and they're all great in some sort of way. The tricky thing is that the strategy is not actually provided in these tools, right? So what I focus on with my clients is putting together the marketing and content creation strategy, automating that process, and then operationalizing the actual creative thought process that needs to go into these other content creation tools to actually create the content, right? What's a tangible example of this, right? So a lot of times, if you say I want to make a LinkedIn post, right? You can very easily just go get on ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT, hey, create a LinkedIn post for me with this topic. Say the topic is, I don't know, come up with something. Chris, maybe.
One thing is, why 2 a.m. wake up calls are not normal and how to get rid of them.
Yeah, gotcha. So if I enter that straight into ChatGPT, right, it would probably spit back something like 2 a.m. wake up calls are not normal because you're anxious and nervous about your next day and you're worried about your job or something, right? It'll just spit out something very generic. When you're building a personal brand online and you have this whole marketing strategy put out, you need to give ChatGPT much more information, much more context. And again, this is a classic example where the tool is only as good as the user of the tool. So what I do with my clients is I work out the entire customer journey, customer persona, and the actual content strategy, their pillars, their content mix, and then also, most importantly, their personal stories. And now once we inject those items in there, especially the personal stories, right? ChatGPT can then spit out a LinkedIn post that is able to connect with someone. And that connection, especially in the day of social media, that authenticity is absolutely key to, one, grab the engagement, two, as a top of funnel piece of content, right? Allow the audience, the reader, to connect with whoever's making that post, right? Because they're just scrolling through 100 posts, and then reconsider about looking for more, right? And so that's what I mean about creating 100 pieces of content that can actually convert. My favorite example of this is I had a client and this is my favorite example. So we had a network of, let me actually take a step back. Sorry. So one of my favorite clients, right? Of course, all my clients are my favorite clients, but one of my favorite examples of this is I had a client that was transitioning their personal brand and they wanted to do AI technology as well as I did. And we were just spitting back ideas back and forth. This person had a network about 20,000 people big on LinkedIn. And so we put together this content strategy on using AI to help you run your business. And the content wasn't working. It wasn't converting. It wasn't getting much engagement. After about 2 weeks, I listened to his story. I poked and prodded my client here and asked him, hey, what is it that we're really trying to accomplish here? And then what I discovered was that this 20,000 person network that my client had were all clients that gravitated towards him because he was an excellent networker, an excellent executive coach. And I told him, you know what? That's what's going to get your content to convert. So we should change our content strategy here. And we did. And once we started changing the strategy, we fed those inputs into ChatGPT, spat out more relevant, more enticing content for his target audience. On his second post, bam, we got him a qualified lead asking for his services on his second post. And so that's the power of the strategy portion. And so, yeah, that's just my favorite example of why that's so key.
Yeah, interesting. The one of the things is what I really love is we're gonna the end, and I want to talk about your journey because you were burned out. You work for Deloitte, which is one of the top 3 or 5, and then you had all these things happen to you. You know that the universe. But one thing is a lot of the audience, they talk about they want to become the next tech billionaire, or they're like their parents wanted them to be doctors. And so what is it about video games? You chased the dream job in video games. What and how did you find out it wasn't the dream? Like, why did you go into that and talk about that?
Yeah, what I found out was that video games was a little bit of a red herring for me. Taking a little bit of a step back, this took a very long time for me to discover. So exactly what you just said, Chris, I grew up very traditional Asian American, second generation Asian American, where my parents really hounded on me for this is the path. So much so that it was so extreme that I literally did not think for myself until after I became an adult. And it was very bad. Both of my parents I did have 2 narcissistic parents. This was like an extreme version of like Tiger Mom and the typical first generation Asian American dad. And I got into Deloitte thinking that was the best thing for me to do. And I was just going ahead and doing all the motions. I was very fortunate that fortune favored me. And I was able to put myself out there and learn very quickly. I had good mentors and good leaders to learn from. And I was accelerating very quickly. All good signs on paper saying I'm doing the right thing. But this was not the right thing according to my plan. Before, when I was a child, I found safety in video games. It was the only time where, if my parents didn't catch me playing video games, it was the only time where I was at peace. And so for some reason, my brain latched onto video games as something that was a part of me. And after I got sick with cancer, I said, hey, I know there's this feeling of not wanting to do things that aren't authentic to me. And at Deloitte, I was chasing work that didn't feel right to me. I was starting to work with leaders that I didn't align values with as well. So I said, hey, let's try this video game industry switch. I spent a year with the steps of career transitioning, and then I made it into Xbox games, and I worked there. And then I found another studio later, a smaller one. So I tried both AAA and I've tried indie video games. And what I'm starting to find is, again, leaders I'm not sharing values with. And then I guess coming full circle with my upbringing, I did a lot of therapy. And so the video games as a red herring was because it was my safety when I was growing up. And I learned that it wasn't really the thing that was, how should I put this? Video games wasn't actually the answer to what I wanted to do with my life. It was really, let me actually take a step back. Let me answer this a little bit more clear cut here based on kind of the answer I put on Podmatch. Sorry. So in the video game industry, I was surrounded by really cool talent and cool projects, but the system really wasn't built for sustainability. And I was putting a lot of work and effort into this anyway. And then a lot of the leaders I was working with, we didn't share the same values. So I learned that I didn't want to just make these games, but I wanted to build something that really fed my soul and aligned with my values and fed my family. And that's when I realized, like, this video game job wasn't the dream job. It was just something I latched onto because it was a safety for me when I was a child. That's why I decided to try something, my second business, which was just go ahead and use my skills, combine my values, and help people save time. And AI and automation, thankfully, I found that, and serendipity, it works out.
Sounds like you're very intelligent, very talented, and you can make things work. It's just you have to find what aligns with you. And a lot of the audience or the listeners or the viewers are very similar. They're very hardworking. They're doctors, lawyers, obviously dentists, and they know how to succeed. It's just you gotta. And I certainly resonate with that tiger parent mentality because I'm also second generation. One thing that I recently started saying no to is these 2 a.m. wake up calls. And I just once I put my foot down, they don't do that. But you talk about why 2 a.m. wake up calls are not normal and how to get rid of them.
Yes. Yeah. And to combine it with what you just said, it really does start with your values. And that was a hard lesson I learned throughout my entire journey. This is the lesson that I was never taught as a child. And this is the lesson I risked my life for. When I was working at Deloitte, I was just working off of what people told me. I had no sense of self. And although I thought I had a personality, I was just working off of what I was told to do, which made me really effective. I will always brag about this. I was a 1% top performer at Deloitte. I have the paperwork to prove it because we had very heavy metric-based analytics about this. I was number one, top percent in my level for 4 years straight. But when I understood what my values were, and finally figured out who I was as a person. So my top 3 values are freedom, authenticity, and self-care. And when I realized I was not taking care of myself and I was not being myself at all, right? And was I really free? I had money, right? Like when I switched to the video game industry, I took a 50% pay cut. And then when I took my second job in the video industry, I took another 30% pay cut. So money didn't matter to me as much. But authenticity, I wasn't being myself. Like I love talking about video games, Pokemon, pop culture. I could not talk about these things with my clients. And then self-care, I was making it full circle, right? Self-care. So this is something I struggle with now. But yes, back then at Deloitte, I was working till 4 o'clock in the morning every single night, getting the work done. And I realized I was not taking care of myself. And that I am very convinced, not that Deloitte got me sick. I'm not going to blame a finger there. But me not taking care of myself got me sick. And I ended up with stomach cancer. I have the scars to prove it. I don't have a stomach anymore, actually, because I had to remove it. And I find myself even now, the last several weeks, I've been working until 2 a.m. every day because I knew that I had to get my business going. And there are these things I have to do to keep it running. But I had to reevaluate my values and say, am I taking care of myself right now? And so what can I do? Because if we don't have our health, then we're not going to have any time to do anything else. And that's why I'm so bullish on making sure we use the best with the time we have.
Yeah. You know? And I love how you put time is the only currency we can't get back.
Exactly.
How can people connect with you and learn more? You've got a very infectious personality and reach out to you, etc.
Thank you. Yeah. If you just thanks for giving me the opportunity. If you just go to studiospark.io, all my socials are there. Connect with me, whatever's most convenient for you. I'm busiest on TikTok and LinkedIn. And yeah, just shoot me a DM on whatever platform you like. Yeah.
Excellent.
Happy to chat. Yeah.
Thanks so much. And I really enjoyed talking with you and keep up the great work.
Thank you. I enjoyed this conversation as well. Thanks so much, Chris.
Uh-huh.